I'm going to recite Al-Fatiha, followed by a translation we received from Imam W.D. Mohammed. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina sirata mustaqim. Sirata ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim. Waladdallin. Ameen. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah, the God and evolver, the cherisher and sustainer of all the systems of knowledge. The merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, the sole judge on the day of religion. We worship you only, and we turn to you only, begging assistance. Guide us on the straight way, the way of those on whom you bestow blessing, not those who incur wrath, nor those who go astray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And thank you so much, Imam, for opening us up. Welcome everyone to Study Al-Islam. I am your sister, Marsha Nivens, and I'm here today for Fitrah Mohammed. Inshallah, she will be back with us next Sunday. But I thank you all for joining us for this Sunday's topic. For those of you who have been with us, you know that in this new session of Life Topics, our second Sunday is dedicated to opening Islamic schools. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest full of knowledge, our brother Clyde El-Amin, who is going to talk to us about the importance of teaching our children the Tafsir of Imam W.D. Mohammed. Brother Clyde El-Amin is an educational leader. He's the former president of the Kennedy King College, as well as Olive Harvey College. And with that, I'm going to bring my brother on. Brother Clyde, we are ready for you.
Thank you, my sister. I'm going to see if your technical tutelage worked. So I'm going to go here with share screen. And I'm going to choose my PowerPoint here. And you have to tell me whether or not I'm sharing. I am sharing.
Yes, we see your screen. If you can just make that a full screen so we can see the whole thing.
Oh, it's not.
Go ahead.
Thought it was. Let me see.
That's fine. If you click slideshow and click full screen, or click file and click full screen.
I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, we can see your screen. If you can go ahead and go to file, and maybe you should see full screen under there, all the way to your left.
Oh, okay, Gabe. There you go.
Okay. If you click that, you should see an option for full screen. If not, go to slideshow. Just click the arrow back out.
Okay, I don't see slideshow. Not on mine.
At the top, you should see slideshow. So go over from file, right in a little bit towards the middle.
I got you. There
Okay,
you go.
click that. And start from the beginning, the first option on your left. And the next.
I got you.
There you go. Here we go.
There we go. Well, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brothers and sisters, this is going to be probably the most participatory session you've had, because this is a daunting topic. And first of all, let me just say assalamu alaikum and how much I appreciate all of you being here. Some of you I know really well. It's wonderful to have Brother Yusuf Salim open up this session. This Brother Yusuf Salim and we worked in the garden together here at the Clyde Muhammad School in Chicago, under the Imam. And this is the first time I've seen his face in a long, long time. So it's already a great blessing for me to be here. It's a great blessing to see all of you. Sister Fitrah and I thought about me taking this topic, and of course I lost the fight because it's Sister Fitrah. But she had me thinking about this for about a month, and I had to really fight myself back from calling her and saying, you know what, this is too big for any one person. To me, it is. Now, I could certainly be wrong, but I'm not that person. If there's a person who's not too big for us, that probably would have been Imam Mohammed. You know, may Allah forgive his sins and grant him paradise. But I know this discussion had to go on, so I've submitted, and I thank you for your time. I certainly am going to try to get through my slides portion of this so that we can have maybe a robust discussion, because I think when people come back to the recorded version of this, certainly there's a lot they probably need to hear that they're not going to hear in my presentation. So with that, I want to start with my slideshow. So sister, don't go anywhere. I probably would need you to move from slide to slide or something. I'm on 1,000 Zooms. This is just the first time I've been the actual presenter. So passing on the commentary of Imam Mohammed to our youth is what I entitled this, and why it is important and why it is vital. Today we have a lot of discussion about this topic of intergenerational wealth, and generally we're talking about material wealth, but it really probably applies even more importantly to our what I would say is our sacred knowledge. And I don't mean that in the narrowest sense of the word, but perhaps in the broadest sense of the word. You know, that is the knowledge that sustains a community, the knowledge that distinguishes a community, the knowledge that enables a particular community to make its contribution to its nation, to its community, to the world. And it's as big a crisis for us, I believe, as African Americans, in terms of this kind of generational wealth not being passed on. It's probably even a bigger problem than the material wealth not being passed on. In fact, I think it may be the reason that the material wealth is not passed on. So, sister, I'm going to try to go to the next slide. I think I might not need you anymore. I should be able to just advance to the next slide here.
Yes, you see those arrows at the bottom of your presentation? They're light gray.
Actually,
to the left.
I don't see them in the
right there.
Oh, they're really light gray.
Yeah.
God, I never would have seen those. Okay.
There you go.
There you go. So we're talking about our young people. I don't intend to define our youth narrowly throughout this topic. So this particular quote from the Quran was chosen because I felt it had the spirit of what I wanted to present. But when I think about our youth, I'm thinking about pretty much anybody 20 years younger than folk like me, maybe 30 years younger than folk like me. But in the Quran, Allah Rahim says, to Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth. He creates what he wills. He bestows children, male or female, according to his will. And that's the Yusuf Ali translation, Surah 42, verse 49. That, again, I don't read that verse with a narrow concept of our children in mind. I read that ayat with the broadest concept of our children in mind, or our youth in mind, because some of us don't have biological children, but the children of our community are ours. We all play a role in their development, whether we choose to do it consciously or whether we choose to not even be involved. We have a role now. We should do everything we can to make sure we're not playing a negative role, but we all have a role. But the children are the means by which a family, a tribe, a people, or a culture continues beyond what is a typical lifespan of an individual or generation. I think in America right now, it's about 78 years. But the children are also the means by which the struggle or the progress of a people continues. You know, the success or the failure of that people's struggle or that people's progress depends on the legacies that one generation bestows on the next generation. So when we look at the condition of a particular group of people, we're looking at the condition that's the result of generations, not one generation, not a few years, not 20 years, maybe a couple of 100 years, but that's what we're looking at. So children are the most precious gift that we get in this life. There are certainly many other gifts that Allah bestows upon us through his creation, but there's none more important, more valuable potentially than our children. The Quran says that our children are a gift to us. That's the parents, the family, the community, and the nature. They are naturally a source of wealth on every level. And what we give them in all forms, it determines what our wealth is going to be as a community for generations down the line. What we give them is also a reflection of what we consider to be important and what wealth they will have in the future. One of the points that I already clearly understood, but not understood the depth of before I started preparing for this, was the extent to which Imam Mohammed spoke directly to our struggle. But in speaking directly to our struggle, he was really speaking to the struggle of America. He was speaking to the challenges that people all over the world face. Because I think our struggle is emblematic of the things that are wrong with the world, but it's also emblematic of how amazingly people overcome challenges when they submit themselves to Allah and remain in submission and accept all of his gifts and use those gifts to advance themselves and to advance the societies around them. So I want to just kind of set a tone of the broad way in which I'm talking about our future here. I'm talking about the future of our community, but we are custodians of the struggle. We're custodians of the struggle of African Americans, meaning that we're really the custodians of the struggle of America, and we're custodians of the struggle of humanity. And we've been gifted with something really great in that to assist us in playing that role. So I chose this quote from Elijah Cummings, who's most of us know, late Maryland congressman. I'm sure Brother Yusuf Salim may know more about him than most of us. And I was reading the White House statement on Juneteenth that was sent to me by Brother Bashir Assad here. Brother Bashir Assad is very, very diligent in sending us quotes from the Imam's articles from Radio Islam and reminding us of that language and keeping us in touch with that language. And that was his quote in here. He says, "Our children are the living messengers we send to the future that we will never see." I think I like the fact that his name was Elijah too, probably, maybe subconsciously. But he said, they are also the messengers we send. And I say, they are also the messengers that we send to a future that will never know of us if we don't equip our children with the legacy that prepares them for that future. So we move into oblivion if we don't equip our children properly for the future, because they will not have a future that will prompt anyone to really think that we did anything worthwhile. So you can think about that on your individual family level. You can think about that on a community level. You can think about that on a national level, etc. But we are a distinct community with a distinct responsibility in America. Now, one of the things the Imam talked about a lot was language. And I knew that, but in preparing for this, I came to a greater appreciation for how conscious he was of the role of language and much of what he gave to us. This challenge of holding on to language that empowers us in our freedom struggle has been with us since the time we arrived in America. In fact, Imam Mohammed referred to this as our determination to keep this language, because there was just something in us that he calls the slave ancestry that would not give up. And if you even have a superficial recollection of basic, just fundamental beginning stories about slavery, one of the first things they tried to take away from us was our ability to communicate to each other. And remembering that we were coming here as all Africans. Sometimes we were from multiple tribes, sometimes we were from the same tribe. Sometimes we couldn't talk to each other in each other's native language. So one of the things they really did was they suppressed the use of the drum, okay? Because they knew that was a way that they thought that was a way that we communicated with each other. They probably had a stereotypical view of it, but there was probably some truth to it. We didn't have, we might not have been able to talk to each other in each one's native language, but one of the things you know about, if you know anything about the history of the Black church, Black religious gatherings, etc., one of the things that we do a lot of is we do a lot of humming without words. So we found ways to fight back. I'm a country boy, very fundamentally and very proudly a country boy. I was raised in Alabama. I say I'm from Montgomery, but I spent more time from around Montgomery than I spent in Montgomery, in what we call the country then. And I went back to that. We went back to that country church because we just hadn't seen it in a long time. And I had forgotten how they start their church service. And they start their church service with this, I don't know how many minutes it lasts, but it's just humming. It's just humming and humming. And everybody's communicating and it's humming. And then eventually they have what I call a rotating monologue that comes in, and people say their individual prayers, but they start off with that humming and everybody understands what everybody's humming is. And I hadn't thought about that in quite a few years. Again, that's something that this particular assignment brought me to. So the Imam talks about how the loss of the freeing language can end your freedom struggle. And he said, quoting him here, he says, "See how a people can lose their mission, lose their struggle. A simple change of language without your recognition that language is changing can cut off the growth of your freedom struggle. Stop it, dead, kill it, and allow the forces of the enemy to take it over." And this is from one of his articles in the early 70s, and I apologize that I didn't put the exact article. I do have it on, I think, all the following quotes from him. I will try to find that and send it to Sister Fitrah. So here he's talking about a change in language that comes from outside of us. He's not necessarily talking about us as people. He's certainly not talking about us as his community and his followers, but he's bringing out the point that you have to work to protect the language of your struggle. Because if you don't protect the language of your struggle, the enemies of your struggle will co-opt the language of your struggle, and they will give you that language back transformed into something that is not to your benefit and maybe to your harm. And it's not just and it's language, it's other expressions. When I'm using language in the broadest possible sense here, other expressions of you declaring your freedom or declaring your dignity. One of the things that comes to mind is hairstyles. I've seen at least 3 cycles of African Americans expressing themselves with their hairstyle. Most people my age probably have seen at least 3 cycles of it, and it often starts off decent. It starts off with maybe the afro, or maybe some decent presentation of braids, or something else. And then all of a sudden it just goes rogue. It goes ridiculous. This last cycle that we're kind of in the ridiculous stage of now, I remember when I started seeing so many young people sticking with this natural, dignified presentation of natural hairstyles. The young sisters, the brothers, etc. And now I see sisters walking down 53rd Street here in Hyde Park in Chicago, and they're almost stepping on their hair. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they grabbed the stop. They saw what was happening. They grabbed onto it. They took control of it, and they took it to a ridiculous extreme. They took it to something that's no longer dignified, something that's no longer an expression of your struggle, expression of your embracing your identity, expression of your respect for your ancestors. And it just becomes another expression of us giving all of our money to the same people and looking as ridiculous as they want us to look. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who has extensions looks ridiculous. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the garish extremes of it that they brought about. The fact that they now, instead of even the young brothers are getting extensions, instead of using their hair, they are buying hair to get this style, and someone else is telling them where that style should go. So this applies to any expression that speaks the words, gives a message that you want to give about your struggle. The Imam's commentary is a language that frees us. He uniquely spoke to our journey. He spoke to our strengths, our weaknesses, our uniqueness, and our evolution into a unique people. And that language is based on his unique understanding of Quran and the life of Prophet Muhammad. And he may not be saying this is from the Quran sometimes when he's speaking, but those of us who know him know that he stays within that paradigm. But he continues the commitment that we saw in his father. And he gives credit to others of carrying on our struggle to be a free people, carrying on our struggle to give the gifts that Allah has blessed us with to humanity, starting with our community and spreading out to the world. So his commentary is probably the most valuable freedom tool we've gotten in the last century. I don't think I have to convince anybody here about that, but I can just think of some things that always jump out at me when I say this. When I walk through my community, I have occasions to go into African-American churches. I have occasions to go into white churches. It could be events, it could be funerals, etc. And I now take it for granted that I'm not going to see a white image of Jesus representing an image of God. Astaghfirullah. That is a consequence, a product of the language of Imam Warith Muhammad. It's also a product of him guiding us to work with our people in advancing our freedom struggle. We didn't use those words, but those of us who participated in CRADE, and some of those of us who actually know about CRADE, committed to remove all images that attempt to portray the divine, we know that there were people outside of our community that joined with us in that effort. And I think it's a blessing that we're able to say that this is not just a blessing, not just a victory for us, the Muslims, but it's a victory for our community. And it's a victory for our freedom struggle. And I don't think you could even measure the impact that that has had on our freedom struggle. And I hope that someday, maybe some of us, will study that, from a social scientist or psychologist, point of view, and publish what our findings are, because that was one of the most destructive cultural forces that came against us and during our time in America, since slavery. Okay. How do I know the Imam gave priority to us passing his commentary on to the young? Well, he exemplified it in lots of ways. And he did it in a number of areas. The main ones being, I guess the four: education, business, culture, and religion. Some of us talk about. We often love the term the four rivers, but he didn't just tell us to do things. He was almost always an example of the thing that he was telling us to do. I know Brother Yusuf Salim knows in Chicago, his presence in the school was quite a constant thing, and not as an inspector, but actually as a participant in the educational process. He clearly saw himself, and we saw him too, as being on our team in this commitment to actually move our community along by transmitting our language, transmitting it through education, but also transmitting it in other culture, transmitting it through business, which supports culture and education, and transmitting it through our understanding of religion. That for us, that was Quran, but also the Bible. He knew that our people were still in the Bible. And obviously, we all remember that his father taught almost wholly out of the Bible, but he used scripture that people are already embedded in to give this same liberating message. And I'm talking a lot about the struggle for the freedom struggle. So it may seem I'm just talking about Black people, but America is not free until we're free. America is addicted to our oppression. Like any other addiction, there's no such thing as an addiction that frees you to actually become the human being expressing the full potential that Allah has given you. So I'm simply establishing that it was a priority that was demonstrated and made apparent in so many ways that we were to pass this on. So, as I said, education was a priority. Universal education was his priority, really what I should say. The Clyde Muhammad schools was dear to his heart, dear to my heart, etc. But education of people of all ages was what he was committed to. Education of people beyond our community is what he was committed to. He took very concrete steps to make sure that we pursued education from, they say, the womb to the tomb, I say, from birth to the grave. And he stepped out as a leader by deeds and by words in pursuing that. He, for example, pushed for models of excellence. Early in his leadership, he openly stated that education was his priority. And concrete steps he took to demonstrate that was, he talked about models of excellence in our school nationwide. Not a top-down model of excellence. It wasn't like Chicago is going to be the place that everybody imitates. It was, we're going to find the most excellent examples of what we're pursuing around our community, and we're going to adopt those across the community to the fullest extent possible. He drove the development of curriculum that was reflecting his unique understanding of the Quran and our unique history. He oversaw a project to get a Muslim teachers college approved. I believe at this point, I know it was the first American Muslim teachers college, expressly called that, that ever got approved to operate in America. There was another college came just after that in Chicago, which is what we now know as American Islamic College. Those are separate projects, not the same thing. And he also made a pretty concrete effort to both start a boarding school and to saved an important historical Black institution down in North Carolina, in Sedalia, North Carolina. I think it was called the Palmer Memorial Institute, which had been a boarding school that had enhanced the lives of many Black children and consequently their families. It was ran by this woman, historical figure called Charlotte Hawkins Brown. I remember taking a trip to North Carolina as he was pursuing that project. He made several trips, but I was on one of them, and I actually saw that historic location. I believe it still exists. If anyone is on from North Carolina, maybe they can tell us during the discussion whether that school still exists or whether it exists as a historical marker or something. I hope it's not gone. I would hate for us to lose that history. But here's an example of how in advancing his language and advancing our community, and certainly wanting the gift of Al-Islam to spread throughout America, certainly to our people, to our families, because our families, most of us, our big extended family still is a minority Muslim. Some of us, there may be some of the younger people on here who were born Muslim, and maybe they have a large family. Maybe they have some cousins, etc., that are Muslim. But hey, that was very much the exception a generation or so back. And for me, that's still an exception. 90% of my family is still Christian, but they have become more and more receptive to what Islam has to offer them. You know, many of them don't eat pork anymore. Many of them are trying to get away from, if they haven't gotten away from, the idea of worshiping white people, even if it's not on the wall of the church. So that has been the influence of Al-Islam. That's been our influence. That is a boost to our freedom struggle as African Americans. It's a boost to making freedom, the struggle to make freedom universal in America. Okay. The Imam was also an example of how concretely you make sure that the youth, the younger people, are inheriting and becoming familiar with his language. He directly taught a group of youth in Quran and commentary. I don't know for sure if he did it outside of Chicago. I believe he may have done some of that outside of Chicago, but he did it here in Chicago. And many of them have gone on to, to great accomplishment in Quran, Arabic, and other Islamic disciplines. And some of you may know some of them. I'm afraid to start calling names because I may confuse one person with the other. But I know here in Chicago, we have several imams that were in that class, and there are some young women I've met that I'm pretty sure were in that class. And I believe he may have done some things around the country, maybe Atlanta. Believe if any of you know some work that he did other places, I'd like you to please make sure that you bring that up later on. So what does that leave for us to do? It kind of leaves us, certainly there's no conclusion we can come to except that this is something that we must do. And following his example, what is left for us to do? And that is basically just bringing all of our resources and applying them to the task of passing on this commentary. We need to harness the resources we have in this 21st century that we live in that we didn't have before, that he didn't have at the time. I'm still playing catch up. I'm constantly playing catch up with the technology. I think young people younger than me, probably need to help in that if they're not already helping in that. And I think many of them are. I've been introduced to a couple of groups around the country that are doing some amazing work. I'm seeing some of our young people step into the culture, as they call it, and express concepts that have, to me, seem to be from the Imam. Imam. And some of them are just expressing concepts from the Quran. And some of them are just presenting some clean culture to their age groups. And some of it is appealing across age groups. I find some of what they do to be quite appealing and enjoyable myself, and elevating, not something that's basically taking away your moral strength, wasting your valuable time, aborting your intellectual development, which is what a lot of popular culture does. Much of it is designed to do that. And now it's even more apparent that some of it is designed to make sure that we end up enslaved again, because a lot of the music that is out here, I have learned very unintentionally, is in some quarters consciously designed to make sure that more of us end up in the prison industrial complex. Some of the same people that are investing in that kind of music are investing in private prisons. And that is something that I can say with confidence now that I would have not said publicly before, because I wasn't confident that I had data to back that up. But I'm confident that I have data, anecdotal and otherwise, to back up the fact that that is what's going on there. Okay. So what are some of the things that we need to do, that we can do, and some of us are doing? First of all, be examples. We have to be lifelong learners ourselves. I thought children stopped imitating you once they became adults, because they go through this stage with adolescence where they seem to be trying to do anything that's the opposite of what you're doing. But as I look at the children that I raise now, I'm surprised at the things they do that are still imitating me. I mean, imitating the me of today, not imitating the me of yesterday. And of course, I'm never going to tell them that I see it, because I don't want it to stop. The minute that I say I see it, it's probably going to start to wane. But the Imam made us, there's a quote from the Imam that I think really goes to this. And he says, our prayer is the prayer of nature, and nature prays not only for discipline, nature prays for growth and increase. And nothing increases us more than knowledge. He says, our Lord, increase me in knowledge, is the prayer of the righteous. There is the link there for that quote where I got that from. And it's so much more there than I was able to put in this presentation. So I hope that those of you who are interested will find the time to go there and read the rest of that article. Is that the end? Yeah, I think that's actually the end of my slideshow. There were a couple other things I did not include in there that I did want to bring to you. Yeah. Earlier I was talking about the Imam's language as a freeing language. He broke some actual locks on our mind that I didn't know was on my mind, even after coming into under his leadership. He also had a unique perspective that joined what we think of as disparate elements of our freedom struggle. He saw the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Martin Luther King as the two main branches of our struggle, and each of them pursuing victory in one of the halves. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was obviously pursuing the independent economic half. Martin Luther King was pursuing I guess you would say, the more moral and social path. But neither could be sustained without the other. And he made an interesting statement that his father tried to make a turn and move over to that part that Martin Luther King had dominated in. He said that Allah saw fit to take him when he started to make that turn. And Martin Luther King started to make a turn toward Black dignity, self-reliance, etc. And Allah took him shortly after he started trying to make that turn. And I thought that was extremely insightful and thought-provoking for me. It's something that I'm going to look into more, because I think it's a part of the marrying of different parts of our struggle is necessary for our struggle to actually be sustained and to be successful. I think that might be, I didn't talk a lot about business, but business is, it's the rock, the practical rock of any community. If you don't have control of the economic resources that come to your community, you don't have control of the future of your community. You don't even have control of the present of your community if you don't have an established business community with its own approach to business, its own networks, its own unique outlook. Businesses and other communities are an expression of a culture that's friendly to business. You'll find, if you go into the Jewish community, you'll find some unique aspects of their business and how they make sure it's almost as a part of their culture that money moves a certain way. It's not just that they shop with each other, but they have institutionalized certain things that make sure that it's easy for them to help each other. And when one needs money, when one needs to start a business, when one needs to save a business, etc. You can find that among some of our brothers, Middle Eastern brothers here in Chicago. They have little institutions that you will never know about unless you really become more intimate with that community, that have been there for a long time, and that sustains them. There's a certain cooperativeness to their businesses. They drive us to the brink with this whole thing of business is individual success. Business has never been individual success because, first of all, you can't have success without your customers. So if you just on that basic, simple level, business is always cooperative. You have to have other people for your business to cooperate. Business needs for the community to be successful because the business needs to grow its own talent in its own community to sustain its future, for it to be more than one generation long. Big business is big because lots of people participate. You know, they put personalities in front of us, so we believe that Elon Musk did all of that. You know, Jeff Bezos did all of that. You know, some other great business tycoon did all of that. That's a good way to keep poor people poor, is to have them believing that business is something that an individual does. It is not successful business. So I think I'm going to wrap up there.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Brother Clyde. Actually, I'm going to ask you to take down your slides so that we can see the
Now, you told me to, is that pause share or?
You can pause share and then it's going to give you the option to stop share.
Oh yeah, we did go over that, right?
Right. And so while you're doing that, there you go. Thank you so much for that presentation. If anyone has a question, please put it in the chat so that we can make sure that we address the question. But I do have a question. And so a lot of times there's a conversation in the community. It's sort of like that very quiet buzz about, you know, where are our youth, and, you know, they're not engaged and all of those things, right? And so, and you just spoke about the language of Imam Mohammed and how that can be beneficial to our youth and young adults in helping to develop them so that we create this environment of dignified, educated individuals that propel our community forward. And so I'm asking, how do you suggest that our communities incorporate the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad in our schools and even in the public space, because we only have so many schools that are in existence right now. So I added in the public space as well, because we have educators in our community who are not necessarily in a Clyde Muhammad school or in an Islamic school, but their students could benefit from the language of Imam Muhammad and helping to develop those young children not connected to one of our schools.
I have some answers. I'm sure there are plenty more answers out there. One of the things we can do is we can use technology. Our youth, they love technology. Every time I get in trouble with my cell phone, I try to find a young person around me. If it's something, if I could catch up with them, I try to find one of the ones in my family. But they love technology. Another thing we can do is, very basic thing we can do is we can ask them. Ask the young people why they don't participate in certain things that we think they should be participating in. Ask them to tell us what would bring them to it, or give them something concrete to do. I'm going to probably get in trouble, but I'm in trouble all the time anyway. But this was look, I grew up in the church. I did. My mother kept us in a church. Her church was very boring to us. Okay. We never said that because that would have gotten us into some serious trouble. But she picked up on it. And remember, I'm growing up in the midst of the bus boycott and the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama. Some of the churches are really into it. Some of them are also into trying to keep the young people engaged because they needed the young people in that struggle. They needed young people to play a role in that. So there was a church in our community. It's called Bell Street Baptist Church. It's now a National Historic Site. And Reverend Fields was the pastor. And you can find him, believe it or not, on Facebook today. The man is 99 years old. They're posting on Facebook. Okay. He had activities for children during the week. There was always seemingly he had something that they were doing in church. Mm-hmm. Now, to keep her credibility, my mother would make us go to her church once a month. Church wasn't even involved in the civil rights movement and was around the corner from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church and around the corner from Martin Luther King's home. So, but that kept us engaged in church. And one of the things, it seems we were always presenting something in church. So how often are our young people presenting in Talim? And that's a rhetorical question, but one for consideration. Because if we ask them to say something, they may actually believe we think they have something to say. We never ask them to say anything. Maybe they don't believe we think they have anything to say. We can ask them about what it's like to be out in the community and in high school, not being a Muslim. What are some of the challenges that you face? How do you deal with it? What can I say to my own child who's going to be starting high school next year, who's a Muslim, about how to handle themselves, Now, because most of our kids are trying to walk the straight path, they're not trying to go out there and do anything stupid. They're really trying to walk the straight path. And I don't know what it is that stops us from doing that. And maybe I have an advantage because I've always kind of been in a lane where I had to connect with people younger than me, particularly in the educational space. So maybe it's a natural thing for me. So I'm not judging people who are not doing it. They may not have the same agility that I have to do this because they haven't had as much practice at doing it. It hasn't been something they've done. It's been something maybe they've looked for someone else to do. But you can pull the coat of your Imam, about this idea, and he will probably be happy to receive that idea because children come back to where they feel, just like us, they come back to where they feel appreciated. they come back to where they feel important. And another thing, all of us know that happened in the church. Almost, I mean, how many of us that went to a church that didn't have a youth choir or some kind of young people singing something sometime, you know? And look, the Imam exemplified that for us. Early in his administration, he exemplified that for us. We even had, when we would have Talim on Sunday, we had developed a choir, a choral group. We had a number of activities where the children were performing, dancing, singing, etc. for us. So it's not like what we need to do has never been demonstrated. I don't know, maybe we need to actually ask ourselves how we got away from it.
And so I have another question that's coming from the chat. This is from Sister Amatala. Do you have any suggestions on how to revive the importance of our own education system? And then she gives an example, the establishment of more full-time schools, pre-K through 12 or college in the communities in the association with Imam W.D. Mohammed.
I think, considering our resource base, we may have to do something that's a little different from what we've seen in the past. We might have to do some hybrids of homeschool co-op, because a group of parents can get together who don't have the funds to actually get a building and start a school, but maybe they want to, they 5 or 6 may want to homeschool their children, and between the 5 or 6 of them, they can divide up their subject matter strengths. And maybe the children can rotate, maybe they can use a combination of that and Zoom or some other virtual tools to educate our children. Most states actually have curricula now for people who want to do homeschooling. And if they don't, there are so many of them online, it's crazy, you know. And if you can't find one, ask your child to ask Chat GPT to get you one, because I assure you they could do it.
Yeah,
that might evolve into a school, you know, brick and mortar school, you know. Or you may decide that, hey, you're doing pretty good, you know, children are getting into the best schools, whatever, you know. But whatever we do, I think we should try to make sure that we network with each other as much as possible, and that we use the best ideas from one another, because Imam was not interested in a top-down model from Chicago when he was doing it. He was interested in pulling the best from around the country, you know.
Yes, and I was gonna say that Chat GPT is a learning curve, even for me. I'm like, what is this? So I have actually another question from the chat. Is Sister Miriam Sharif. And so I also see her hand raised, but I'm gonna just read what she has. And so it says, what is the name and location of the proposed Muslim Teachers College that was approved? Where would it have been and its academic Islamic focus? And then where could she find any resources about it? And she's currently doing a PhD in anthropology and education at Columbia University. And that part of her work is centered around Black American Muslim women in scholarly third places. And so she was just curious to know more about that Teachers College, which I think is what you were talking about earlier in North Carolina. And I saw some replies too in the chat about the fact that that site is now a historical site.
Yeah, I thought I saw somewhere that was now a historic site. And I'm glad that she's a scholar and a researcher at Columbia, because she's probably going to have to be one to find some information on it. But what I'll do is I'll give you a good lead. I'm sure the Illinois Board of Higher Education keeps very good records. So they should have a record of every school that was given operational authority in the state of Illinois' history, because that's who you had to apply to actually gain operational authority. And I can't remember the exact year, but I'm going to say it had to be in the 70s, late 70s. And the name of the school, the name that we applied under for operational authority was American Muslim Teachers College. And you can find me on LinkedIn, you know, believe me, and you can communicate with me. I don't have any problem communicating with you because I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm happy to know that somebody's doing that. There's some more subtle things about that I probably wouldn't want to say in this forum. I can tell you.
And so I also see some replies coming in the chat about Googling the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Historical Site in Sedalia, North Carolina. I have another question from the chat, and then I'm going to take a question from Sister Zakia, and we probably should be almost at time at that point. But from the chat, do any of our Clyde Mohammed schools have virtual options available for those families not close to a brick and mortar school? And so I'm not sure if you don't have an answer, I do.
If you have an answer, go ahead, because I've worked with them here and there, and they still feel very free to contact me. I get all their emails about their meetings, etc. But if you have an answer, please go ahead, because I'm sure you're more informed than I am.
So one of the schools that comes right to mind for me is the New Africa Omar Online School. And I'm sure I can get some information to Sister Fitrah about that school to put in the newsletter so that everyone has information for that school. And I also believe that my sister out of Chicago, Dr. Lynn, I also think that Dr.
Yes.
Lynn is connected to the school, and I can't, New Medina, it may be, but
New
she's
Medina, yes.
yeah, and I believe that that's an online format as well. But I'll make sure to get Sister Fitrah the exact information for families that are interested in that. Those are the two that come to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. The way I help them now, honestly, I hate, it scares me sometimes when I think it was a long time ago that I was at Clyde Mohammed School. And it's beginning to be a long time ago that I was a college president. That's been about 11 years. But I worked with the schools on the whole issue of being nonprofits. You know, my master's degree is actually in nonprofit management. I realized that's what I was doing when I was running a college, and the teachers were actually doing the educating. And institutions in our community have a tendency to not pay attention to the wealth building that they need to do. And I'm very, very excited and passionate about our institutions becoming wealthier institutions and taking full advantage of what they call nonprofit in America, because it's not non-money, it's nonprofit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out. We have the same degree, the MPA, and so you
Right.
gotta constantly tell people it's not non-money, it's nonprofit. And
Yeah.
so I'm gonna bring Sister Zakia on to ask her question, and then we're going to wrap up. Sister Zakia, you should be able to take yourself off of mute and go ahead and ask your question.
You're still on mute.
I'm mute. I did that. Go ahead. Do it again. There you go.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Right now I'm in a class teaching my students, but I try to listen in. So real quick. So the Clyde Mohammed School, I remember Imam Worthy Mohammed, may Allah be pleased with him, said back in the early 70s, when he came in, and we were going to the Virginia, I think it was, anyways, we were going for lesson plans and everything. And he said that every school, we should be working on our lesson plans, and we should be able to bring each other. If my child was going to a school in Hamden and went to New York, they should not get lost in the sauce, because our curriculum is basically done on the same. So Dr. Hamid, alhamdulillah, we kind of like, he's been back on point with this, and we're working on it now. We all should be working together, because some schools that already have a full-time Clyde Mohammed school and they're doing this, if we collaborate, then we can get this, the information put together where the curriculum is going out, constantly being done and going out, and we're all functioning together. That's something that he really wanted, not everyone doing their own thing. working together as a unit, inshallah. So if you know Dr. Hamid, I'm quite sure everyone does know Dr. Hamid. The Clyde Mohammed School, Sister Katara in Washington. She is one that we have our meetings. I'm going to ask, please, if anyone is interested, Katara is one person that everyone could go to, and we can, I'm sorry that I don't have my papers in front of me. I will give the email, put it there, you know, but inshallah, I'll give it to Fitrah. And then that's how we'll connect it, inshallah. People are interested. We need help. Whatever we can get, alhamdulillah, inshallah. So I just thank you so much, everyone. It's beautiful. May Allah continue to bless us as we strive to do what is right and get away from the wrong, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much for that. And so thank you, Brother Clyde El-Amin, for this presentation today. I'm sure that it's got us all thinking about, you know, what it is that we can do in our respective spaces to be more impactful amongst our youth and our young adults, knowing that that is what sustains the community, and really being intentional about giving them what it is that we have so that it goes forward. And so with that, if you have any last words that you would like to share, I'll go ahead and give you an opportunity for that. And then I'm going to ask Imam Yusuf Salim to close us out in a dua. Do you have anything to share, Brother?
I don't. This has been very, very, very beautiful experience for me. And I won't be upset with Sister Fitrah for giving me this topic any longer.
you did it. Mission accomplished.
She draws the best out of you. Okay.
Thank you so much. And so with that, I'm just going to let you know that we will be back here in this space again, Study Al-Islam, next Sunday, June the 18th. Our third Sundays are about health and wellness. And so we will have with us Dr. Michael McGee, and he will talk to us about the health disparities and the COVID pandemic. So please join us again next Sunday for Study Al-Islam as we go ahead and talk a little bit about health and wellness. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Imam Yusuf Salim to close us out. Just come off of mute, Imam.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. So again, I have many rich memories with Dr. Clyde El-Amin. I mean, we were in the trenches together, alhamdulillah, with Imam W.D. Mohammed. May Allah forgive his sins, set me in paradise. All right, I'm going with Surah, we normally Surah 103, Wal Asr, and I then have it in the original language as well as the English. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Wal Asr. Inna l-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina aminu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. By the token of time through the ages, truly social man is in loss, except such as have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual teaching of truth and of patience and constancy. Sadaqallah wa deen, and Allah speak the truth.